What's up, y'all? It's your girl LK. Lovely kisses, baby. I'm back with some black male worshiper gone wild. Check out a few of these clips.
Crazy, but it seems like the only way women can be consistently happy in a relationship is if men don't fall short in any capacity. Like they can't mess up at all or have any shortcomings that sometimes they can't help. Like, for example, if he were to lose his job for a time period and he's actively looking, women don't want to be having to be providers for too long, right? Or if he gets sick, or if he becomes disabled, or, if it's something that requires more than the normal routine, y'all ain't going for it, right? But you are supposed to be his backup, his support system. Like literally how y'all be backing up your best friends, your man is supposed to be your best friend. So if he should fall on rough times, you're supposed to be there to support him, right? And again, y'all don't give men room to have struggles, at times, and y'all don't really give them enough room to show that you're willing to actually be there for them. A lot of y'all just choose, I'm out, I don't have to put up with this, I don't have the capacity to deal with this. And if you know you can't handle a man, during his rough patches, there's going to be trials and tribulations, right? And if you can't handle some of the trials that he goes through, you ain't ready for a relationship, right? It should not be looked at as a chore to support your partner. It should be something that you want to do. I mean, think about somebody that you love dearly and how you support them. Like, I don't understand why your partner is not put on that same realm. But anyway, yeah, y'all make it almost impossible for men to actually show that they're human. If they are not perfect all the time, or if they fall short, it's like a time limit, an unspoken time limit. If a woman is unhappy, for too long regarding her situation, she out. And what makes this even crazier is that y'all want these men to love you through your trials and tribulations. You don't want to be judged or left unsupported through some of the things that you go through. But the moment he hits a rough patch, and if the rough patch lasts too long in your head, you ain't going for it. So again, we ain't fair. We're not fair when it comes to, our expectations and our willingness to commit to a person. Okay, call me crazy.
That woman is a whole clown. She want women to be doormats, putting ourselves last. It is a time period for a motherfucker to get themselves back on their fucking feet. Maybe 6 months, if you have a family. But to be waiting years and being used up and trying to stay down, women, we get older. Men get older too. But women, we have a time clock, and we can't be staying around in our early 20s through 40s waiting on a motherfucker.
That I met him was through my sister and her now husband. That was his best friend. Our relationship, it started off pretty good. It just kind of dwindled down over the years. I wasn't happy with him anymore. I used to sit in the car and just cry before I would even walk into the house. I had tried to leave him before previous years, and he went crazy and he started throwing things and everything like that, and it made me really uncomfortable. We got engaged and everything just went downhill. And I ended up canceling our wedding and I left him. Originally, like, we had an apartment together. I told him that he could keep the apartment and I would just move out and get my own place. And I didn't have a problem with starting over. I just knew I didn't want to be with him anymore. And that was the end of it. When he kept the apartment, he ended up sending me a message saying that he didn't want to keep the apartment anymore. And I knew as soon as he sent me that message, there was an issue. And I assumed he had done something petty like, maybe left the water on. But I came back to the apartment and everything was gone. The bed, the couch, the TV, literally everything was gone. At this point, obviously, I need to make some money so that I can get back on my feet. At the time, I had a lot of different business coming in. So, I do cakes, pies, cookies, everything like that. Sometimes people would pick up and sometimes I would deliver. Well, a while back, I had met what ended up being a friend on one of my delivers. He was really the first person I've ever opened up to. I later ended up talking to him after I had broken off my engagement. He had always been a good friend, so he offered to move in, and he was working 2 jobs at the time. So, him working, me working, we could work this out, whatever. When he had moved in, eventually it ended up being a relationship. I was really starting to open up even more. Like, a lot of times the talks that we would have, I didn't really know at the time how to say what I needed to say. So I would write it as a poem and I would give it to him. I wrote him a poem and it was called Everyone But You. And it says things like, who did this to you? By this, what do you mean? The way I cry at night, the pain you hear in your screams? Who did this to you? You are beautiful. And I'm not just talking about the inside of you. The outside you don't see. So when I call you beautiful, you don't look at me. I started to realize that there was something off about him. There was something different about him. And it made me very uncomfortable. So I talked to one of my friends about it. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure he's fine. What probably it is that you have just gotten out of a relationship recently. And, you're nervous that he's going to turn out the same way that your ex was. And I was like, okay, that's valid. I still kept having that feeling. So I was like, well, let me get him around some people, because nobody really knew that I was in a relationship. Nobody knew that I was living with a man. My cousin had came into town, and I felt like this was the perfect opportunity because my cousin was a police officer. So I was like, if anything happens, good to go. And I can talk to him about it. We end up going to my uncle's house so we can all get together. It was my uncle, my sister, my mom, and then my cousin. My cousin comes in. He hasn't seen me for a while. He's looking at the tattoos on my arm. He's like, okay, I see you, cuz, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm looking at my boyfriend and he's eyeballing him. And I'm like, why is he looking at him like this? I'm like, okay. And we didn't even eat. Like, after we prayed over the food, we just left because I was about to break up with him as soon as we got in the car. Like, we're not about to do this at all. He's like storming off. He gets into the car and he was like, B, you got some balls. And nobody's ever talked to me like that. So for one, I didn't understand where it came from. And 2, I was really in shock. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you gonna let him grab your butt right in front of me? Once again, this did not happen. I hugged my literally blood cousin. This is not a thing that happened. He was like, take me back to the house, let me grab my stuff, and I don't ever want to see you again. And I was like, okay, I don't ever want to see you again either. Like, what are you talking about? He starts grabbing the steering wheel and swerving me on the interstate. He started smoking a cigarette and he starts putting the cigarette out on me. We got back to the house and he starts packing his stuff. He gets mad at me because I start helping him pack his stuff. And he was like, if the police come in here, I'm killing you and then I'm killing me. And I ended up getting away from him and running away. When he caught up with me, he hit me in my eye, he hit me in my nose. I ended up running away again and he snatched me back into the house and he raped me. The next morning, I woke up, and when I woke up, I obviously tried to call the police and tried to get away from him. And he was like, I know where your uncle stays. He also talked about raping my sister. Not only did I get myself into a situation, I got my family into a situation, trying to protect them and trying to figure out how I was going to stop being afraid of him. I stayed until I could stop being afraid. If we fought the night before, I couldn't go to work because nobody could see that I was traumatized, I was bruised, or anything else. There was actually one time my eye was swollen shut. He pried it open and he had to keep doing it repeatedly so that it would stay open. And he sent me to work and had me tell them that I had pink eye because my eye was bloodshot red. My mom even showed up to my house to give me medicine for pink eye. All of my phone calls had to be answered on speakerphone. If I had clientele, he was always in my messages and he thought I was doing something with my clients. This man quit both of his jobs so that he could stalk me full time. The night that I realized that I wasn't afraid of him anymore, I was at his grandma's house. His cousin comes in and he says hi to everybody. When he says hi to me, he gets mad and he thinks that I looked at him when I didn't, but whatever. And he was like, "Oh, you're effing him, Jazz." So he gets upset. At this point, he has my gun that he obviously took from me. He gets all upset and we ended up getting kicked out of his grandma's house because he was going off and cussing and just really doing too much. So once we got kicked out, he was talking about shooting his cousin's tires out. And he's like, "I'm gonna make sure he can't see you," and blah, blah, blah. He points the gun at me and he said, "I should kill you." I'm driving on the interstate. I said, "Do it." And he said, "What? You think I won't?" And I said, "Pull the trigger." So he puts the gun to my head while I'm driving on the interstate and says, "I should kill you." And I said, "Pull it." Pull it, pull it. And I just went crazy. It scared him. He put the gun down. He stopped talking for the rest of the car ride. That was when I realized that I could scare him. I knew that I was going to get away. And the only way that I thought to get away was to get to work at Marsh to be able to call the police. We went to a party and I just knew I needed to make it through the night without fighting with him. If we fought the night before, I cannot go to work the next day. And when we went out to the party, I didn't even want to enjoy the party or try to enjoy the party. I went into a room by myself with my legs crossed and I was playing with an Rubik's Cube. When I was in there, people kept walking past and they were looking at me and they were like, "Why aren't you in here enjoying the party?" So then my boyfriend comes in there and he was like, "Why are you in here being weird?" He's like, why you in here being weird playing with an Rubik's Cube? I'm good. Y'all can go have fun and, do whatever you need to do. He was like, "No, come out and enjoy the party. You're going to be fine. I'm not going to do anything." They had a bartender there. He asked me what type of drink I wanted. And I said, "Surprise me." He was like, "Oh, you know him, Jazz?" So he ends up fighting me in front of the entire party. Everybody had to pull him off of me. And we ended up getting kicked out the party. At this point, I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to work the next morning. I prayed. Usually my alarm goes off at 7:30. At 7:27, a little black bird came and sang next to my window and it woke me up. He was still asleep. He was still passed out. I got my stuff and I went to work. When I went to work, I was able to call the police. He calls for backup. Backup arrives and he was like, he has a history of violence. He should be in jail for about 30 days. And that gives you time to figure out your next move. After I had put him in jail, I think that he was just scared to go back to jail.
Personally, can't feel sorry for this particular black male worshiper. She kept everything silent. Then for her friend to tell her, "Oh no, you're just tripping. Ain't nothing wrong. You just thinking about the last relationship," and send her friend back to get fucked up is why I'm doing these videos. We have to stop putting these black men before ourselves. That woman intuition woke up in both relationships, but she wanted it so bad. She let a homosexual in. He had 2 jobs at once. She let this man quit both jobs so he could stalk her. I'm saying let, because she didn't do anything about it. She kept everything a secret.
We met at church. I was about 9 years old when we met. As we got older, about 13 is when we started actually talking and trying to be that puppy love boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, from 15 to 29, we were together, got married at 21. I was pregnant 2 years later. I had my daughter 2 years later, my son. And during this period of time, we're still going to church, but now we're on our way to move to Arizona to open up a church of our own. He pulled me 900 miles away from my family. I had no one in Arizona, didn't know anyone in Arizona, and the abuse continued, and it actually magnified. Some of the red flags are being called out your name. Another red flag is trying to isolate you from your family. Other red flags is beginning to belittle you, to devalue you, to make you question your own sanity. So those were, some of the red flags. Actually cheating, having women call the house, disrespecting me, and all of this while I'm pregnant. And so when I'm verbalizing this, he's getting upset. And I remember one incident that a female called and was like, oh, he told me to call him. And I said, well, do you know he's married? And she was like, yeah, he told me to call. And so I got angry. I was arguing, I was fussing, I was cussing, and he took me and slammed me on my back, and I was 8 months pregnant. And because I didn't leave, what ended up happening is that the abuse got worse. And because I wasn't saying anything to anyone, he knew that he can do it, and I wouldn't tell due to the fact of being shamed and embarrassed. It just continued to happen. When he seen that I wasn't telling my family, when he seen that I was kind of keeping this secret, it just got worse. Each incident would get worse, but you get tired. As a woman that is being in that situation, you're drained, your energy is drained, your hope is drained. You start not recognizing who you are in the mirror. And so by 29, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I deserve more. My children deserve more. And I don't have to deal with this. This is not something that I have to deal with. At my job, I was just like, when I get home, I'm asking for a divorce. And when I said that, he was so enraged that he went and got a serrated knife, 8-inch serrated knife out the kitchen, stood in front of me and said, so you leaving? And I said, yes. And before I knew it, the knife slit my throat. What ends up happening after I called my dad, let him know what's going on at 4 o'clock, I ended up going to the medical facility that I worked at. So I didn't go to an actual hospital. I didn't press charges. I didn't do a police report. I just wanted out. At that time, I was just like, this cannot be my life. This cannot be my life. He ended up leaving. He did end up leaving. But when he left, I was the only one that was working. I was the breadwinner, and I had just gotten paid. So he took the car that we had. We only had one car, and he ended up taking the car to drive back from Arizona to California. And because we had joint accounts, he took every dime. Slammed on my back at 8 months pregnant, fighting me, punching me in my eye, punching, hitting, sodomy, being belittled, being devalued, being called out of my name. There was an incident that I had, my oldest daughter was on my leg and my youngest son was in my arms, and we were in a grocery store, and he was trying to impress a lady. And as I'm walking, he tripped me with both of my kids, one on my leg, one in my arm, and he tripped me. And I had to do everything to make sure that I protected the one I was holding so he didn't get hurt. And his words were, I can't play with my wife. And it got to the point where it was no longer abuse behind the doors. It became public. So he was comfortable to disrespect me, not only behind closed doors, but it became public, where the looks, the stares. If you're talking, I'm talking to my friends, I'm talking to my family, and he's butting in talking for me. I could talk for myself. I don't need for you to talk for me. But he wanted to navigate and control the situation. He wanted to control the narrative. So that's more red flags that women deal with, really just trying to shut you down, verbally, emotionally, mentally, make you feel like you're worthless. The abuse list goes on and on, but a lot of the red flags of what I call a narcissist is taking a situation that's their fault and then turning it around on you to make you feel like you're the problem. And that way they don't have to look at themselves to look in the mirror and say, you need to do better.
Black male worshipers need to accept accountability. They did it themselves by believing in them. Get in the comment section. Tell me your thoughts about these clips. Thank y'all for subscribing to my YouTube channel. Until I talk to y'all again.